I stood in court defending a homeless veteran, and the judge found me in contempt, sentencing me to 30 days in jail. But I didn't argue. I didn't beg. Do you know why? Because that judge was my own daughter. Before ordering my arrest, she looked at me coldly and said, "You're just a confused old woman who doesn't understand how courtrooms work. Get her out before she wastes more time." She thought I was powerless, someone she could humiliate and forget. She had no idea that within 90 minutes she'd receive a call asking, "Do you know who you just called a confused old woman and sentenced to jail?" When the truth was revealed, everything changed, and those who mocked me would soon regret it. Thank you for being here with me. If this story caught your attention, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments so we can connect across places and experiences. Also, a quick note, this story includes a few dramatized elements for educational and storytelling purposes. Any similarity to real names or situations is purely coincidental, but the message is meant to be meaningful and helpful. I hadn't spoken to my daughter in 12 years. 12 years since the argument that fractured everything my disapproval of her marriage to lay on, her accusations that I was controlling my inability to apologize even when I knew I should. She'd cut contact completely, changed her phone number, stopped responding to emails. I'd followed her career from a distance through legal publications and court records, watching her rise to county judge in Allentown, Pennsylvania, a position that should have made me proud. Instead, 3 months ago, I'd sat in FBI Special Agent Sarah Wheeler's office in Philadelphia, reviewing financial records that made my stomach turn. My daughter was taking bribes. Not small favors or minor ethical lapses. Systematic calculated corruption, jailing defendants on fabricated charges to clear properties for a development scheme orchestrated by Preston Kane, a predatory land speculator. 47 families targeted, millions in fraudulent transfers, civil rights violations that would make any decent lawyer sick. Wheeler had evidence bank records, property transfers, suspicious patterns, but no direct proof linking Veronica to the conspiracy. No recordings of her coordinating with Kane. No witnesses willing to testify against a sitting judge. "We need someone inside," Wheeler had said. "Someone who understands judicial procedure. Someone Kane and your daughter won't suspect." I'd volunteered immediately. Not as an undercover agent, I'm 68 years old, a federal circuit court judge, not some action movie protagonist, but as what the FBI calls a high-level confidential source. I would wear FBI-provided recording equipment authorized under Title III federal wiretap warrant, signed by Judge Morrison. I would position myself in places Kane frequented. I would observe, document, and if opportunity arose, become a witness to something that couldn't be explained away. 3 weeks of preparation, learning to operate the miniature camera hidden in my coat button, memorizing cover stories, buying secondhand clothes that transformed me from distinguished jurist to anonymous elderly woman. I'd lost weight intentionally, let my hair go gray, without dye-wore cheap drugstore reading glasses. But the real disguise was simpler. Veronica hadn't looked at my face in 12 years. People forget details they've chosen to erase. On day 1, October 15th, 9:30 a.m., I stood on Maple Street in Allentown's old fairgrounds district, watching Preston Kane approach an elderly black man on a porch. Frank Martinez, 72 years old, Vietnam veteran, owner of 417 Maple Street for 40 years. "This property's been condemned old man." Kane said, his voice loud enough to carry. "City says it's uninhabitable. You got 72 hours to vacate." Frank held up papers. "Judge already denied your eviction motion last month. Says my house is structurally sound. I got the ruling right here." "That was a different judge." Kane smiled. "New motion, new judge, new outcome. You'll see." "I ain't going nowhere." Kane grabbed Frank's collar, shoving him against the porch railing. "You'll go where I tell you to go, you understand." I stepped forward, my hand instinctively moving to my coat pocket where my phone sat ready. "Excuse me. I saw what just happened." Kane released Frank, turning toward me with predatory assessment. "Who the hell are you?" "I'm a witness. You just assaulted this man." Kane laughed. "Lady, you look lost. This is private property business. Move along before you get hurt." But I didn't move. I stood there elderly and apparently harmless while the camera in my coat button recorded everything. 2 hours later, Frank and I both received court summons. Emergency hearing at 2 p.m. Presiding Judge the Honorable Veronica Winters. My daughter. Wheeler called me at 1:30 p.m. Are you sure about this? If she recognizes you, she won't, I said. She hasn't looked at me in 12 years. She's not going to start now. At 1:45 p.m., I walked into Allentown County Courthouse. Wearing my disguise and my FB, I authorized recording equipment, ready to see what my daughter had become, and ready to bring her entire corrupt world crashing down. The Allentown County Courthouse smelled like old wood and institutional coffee. I'd been inside hundreds of courtrooms during my career, but walking into this one as a defendant felt surreal. The bailiff led Frank and me through double doors. Modern courtroom, overhead lights humming, the judge's bench elevated dark wood gleaming, a handful of people scattered throughout court staff attorneys, 2 reporters. All rise for the Honorable Judge Veronica Winters. My heart stopped, but I kept my head down, shoulders hunched like an elderly woman intimidated by authority. My daughter walked through the chamber door wearing black robes, hair pulled into a severe bun, 38 years old, polished. She settled behind the bench without looking at the gallery, opened a file, adjusted her reading glasses. 12 years since we'd spoken. 12 years since the argument that ended everything. She'd made it clear she didn't want me in her life. Now I stood in her courtroom and she had no idea. Frank approached first. Your Honor, Frank Martinez representing myself. This morning Mr. Preston Kane assaulted me outside 417 Maple Street. Mr. Martinez. Veronica interrupted, not looking up. Did you file the proper motion? Your Honor, this is a preliminary complaint. Motion denied. Next case. Her voice was flat, dismissive. She still hadn't looked at Frank's face. That's what 12 years of corruption had done. She'd learned to avoid seeing defendants as human beings. Eye contact required acknowledging humanity. Easier to look at files, at paperwork, at anything except the people whose lives she was destroying. Frank stepped aside, confused and angry. I approached the podium, keeping my head down, my voice hoarse. State your name for the record, Veronica said, eyes on her screen. Evelyn Grace Winters. I watched for recognition. Nothing. She typed something, still not looking up. You're representing Mr. Martinez. I'm testifying as a witness. I saw Preston Kane assault. Ms. Winters, are you an attorney licensed in Pennsylvania? Your Honor, I'm not practicing law. I'm providing witness testimony. Ms. Winters. Veronica glanced up, but her eyes swept past me dismissively. You're disrupting court proceedings. Sit down. Your Honor, a man was physically attacked. I said sit down. Veronica's jaw tightened. Bailiff, if Ms. Winters speaks again without permission, remove her. But I couldn't stop. This was why I was here. Your Honor, this court is facilitating an unlawful eviction scheme. Preston Kane is using fabricated condemnation orders to... That's enough. Veronica's voice cracked through the courtroom. She finally looked directly at me, but her eyes held only contempt, no recognition. 12 years of estrangement plus deliberate blindness equals invisibility. You are in contempt of court, Ms. Winters. A lawyer at the prosecution table stood. Your Honor, perhaps a warning. 24 hours in county holding, Veronica said coldly. Maybe that will teach you some respect for judicial authority. Even her own attorney looked surprised. Bailiff, remove this woman from my courtroom. Get her out of here before she wastes any more of the court's time. Officer David Miller, the court security officer, approached along with another bailiff. Miller was early 40s professional demeanor, someone who'd probably worked courthouse security for years. He gestured for me to stand. Ma'am, let's go, he said quietly. I didn't resist. The camera in my coat was recording everything Veronica's voice, her casual cruelty, her complete dismissal of testimony that threatened her corrupt enterprise. As Miller led me toward the holding area, I glanced back once. Veronica had already moved to the next case, her expression unchanged, my existence forgotten the moment I left her sight. She had no idea she'd just sentenced her own mother to jail, and she had no idea what was coming next. The holding cell smelled like despair and industrial cleaner, but it also smelled like opportunity. Officer Miller unlocked the heavy door and gestured me inside. Winters, This is your stop." I stepped in. Concrete walls, fluorescent lights, a metal bench bolted to the floor, small barred window near the ceiling. 2 women already occupied the space. The younger one, maybe 22 thin, clutching a manila folder like a lifeline, looked up with red-rimmed eyes. The older woman, mid-40s, with short graying hair, sat against the wall with the weary posture of someone who'd been through this before. Leon closed the door behind me. The lock clicked. His footsteps echoed down the corridor. The older woman studied me. "What did you do, jaywalk?" I sat on the bench. "Contempt of court. Told the truth." She laughed bitterly. "Yeah, that'll do it in Judge Winters' courtroom." The younger woman looked up. "You had Judge Winters, too. Just now, about 30 minutes ago. Welcome to the club." The older woman extended her hand. "Darlene Wolfe." I shook it. "Evelyn." The younger woman didn't offer her hand, just held that folder tighter. "Amber Reed." "What are you in for, Amber?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I missed a court date. I was at my mother's funeral. Judge Winters gave me 60 days. 60 days for missing court during a funeral." I kept my expression neutral. "And you, Darlene?" 45 days for a $50 parking ticket I couldn't pay. Lost my job while I was locked up. Lost my apartment. My kids are with my brother now. I thought about the small device behind my ear, recording everything. Wheeler would hear this. The FBI would hear this. "How long have you been here?" 3 days, Darlene said. "Amber's been here a week." Amber's hands trembled on the folder. I was supposed to start my paralegal certificate program. I had a scholarship. They gave my spot to someone else. "What's in the folder, Amber?" She hesitated, then slowly opened it. Papers spilled onto her lap. Foreclosure notices, bank statements, letters with Cedar Consulting LLC letterhead. My public defender said to throw these away, that they didn't matter, but I kept everything. She looked at me with desperate eyes. "They took our house. Judge Winters signed the foreclosure order. My mom died 6 months after we lost it. The stress..." Her voice broke. I leaned forward carefully. "Can I see?" She handed me a document. Foreclosure notice for a property on Oak Street, signed by Judge Veronica Winters. The date 8 months ago. The reason, unpaid property taxes. But attached was a receipt showing those taxes had been paid. "This says you paid." We did pay, but the city said they lost the records, and the house was already sold at auction before we could prove anything. Who bought it? Preston Kane Development. There it was, the connection Wheeler had told me about. Kane, Veronica, Cedar Consulting, a pipeline designed to steal homes and jail anyone who resisted. Darlene spoke up. "My brother Marcus lost his house the same way. Judge Winters signed his foreclosure too. He'd lived there 30 years. Paid off. Then suddenly the city claimed he owed back taxes. Took it in 3 months. I pulled out another paper from Amber's folder. Cedar Consulting LLC payment receipt, $150. Payee redacted. But the pattern was there. "Amber, would you be willing to testify about this in federal court?" She looked confused. "Who would listen?" "Someone will, I promise you." "Who are you?" I met her eyes. "Someone who keeps promises." Darlene stood as footsteps approached outside. A guard called through the bars. "Wolf, your ride's here." Darlene gathered her things, turned back to me. "Good luck. You're going to need it with Judge Winters." "What's your brother's full name?" "Marcus Wolfe. Why, I want to help him get his house back." She laughed without humor. "Lady, no offense, but you're in a jail cell." "Not for long." The guard opened the door. Darlene left. Now just Amber and me. Amber's voice was small. "Are you really going to help us?" "Yes." "How?" "You'll see. Very soon." I glanced at the clock on the wall. 3:47. In 13 minutes, Veronica's phone would ring. Helen Porter would call her about a problem with my intake paperwork. Veronica would discover she'd just jailed a federal appeals court judge, her own mother, and her world would begin to end. I looked at Amber. "Keep those documents safe. The FBI is going to need them." "The FBI..." "Trust me." The clock ticked forward. 3:48. 12 minutes. I didn't know what was happening in Veronica's chambers while I sat in that holding cell documenting Amber and Darlene's stories. But later weeks after the arrests, during one of many debriefing sessions, Wheeler told me exactly what transpired at 3:25 p.m. on October 15th. Veronica had returned to her chambers, still irritated about the disruption I'd caused. She'd poured coffee settled behind her desk, ready to review afternoon case files. Leon would pick her up at 5 o'clock p.m. They had dinner reservations, but something nagged at her. That woman's voice. The name, Evelyn Winters. "You kept your maiden name after marrying my father." Wheeler told me later, reconstructing events from courthouse security footage and computer logs. "Your daughter kept it too after marrying Leon. Common last name, sure. But combined with Evelyn Grace..." According to Wheeler, Veronica had pulled up the county booking system, something judges rarely did personally. She'd typed my name into the search bar. The record appeared immediately. Winters Evelyn Grace. Dobb, March 17, 1958. Charge contempt of court. Arresting Judge Winters Firth. Last known address, Philadelphia, PA. Wheeler said Veronica sat frozen staring at the screen for almost 2 minutes. Then she'd pulled up my driver's license photo from the DMV database, a privilege judges technically weren't supposed to use for personal reasons. But Veronica had stopped caring about ethical boundaries years ago. My photo appeared, taken 3 years earlier. Heavier, professionally styled hair, expensive clothes, but unmistakably me. The security camera in her office caught her putting her head in her hands. Wheeler said. She sat like that for 5 minutes. Then she picked up her phone and called Leon. Wheeler had the recording. Veronica's office was already under Title III federal wiretap authorization. Judge Morrison had signed the warrant 6 weeks earlier after reviewing evidence of systematic civil rights violations. On the call, Veronica's voice shook. "I just did something terrible. Mom was here, in my courtroom, and I didn't recognize her. Leon, what your mother Evelyn..." "Veronica, she testified in a case. I held her in contempt. I sent her to county holding for 24 hours. Leon, Jesus Christ, Veronica. How did you not..." "Veronica. I don't know. She looked different. Older. I didn't look closely. I never looked closely at them." Them, Wheeler had emphasized when telling me this. Not defendants or witnesses, just them. People beneath her notice. Leon had asked what Veronica planned to do. "I'll bring her up here," Veronica said. "After hours. We'll talk. Figure this out. She can't just show up like this without... There has to be a reason. Maybe she's sick. Maybe she needs something." It never occurred to Veronica that I was there to destroy her. At 3:45 p.m., Veronica called down to county holding and ordered the guard to bring me to her chambers at 4 p.m. Unusual request, Wheeler told me. Judges don't typically summon contempt defendants to private meetings, but the guard didn't question it. Your daughter was known for unconventional procedures. While Veronica waited for me to arrive, she'd opened her desk drawer and pulled out a bottle of bourbon she kept hidden there. Poured 2 fingers, drank it straight. Then she'd opened her computer and started searching Federal Judge Pennsylvania, Evelyn Winters. My official photo appeared. Circuit Court of Appeals, distinguished career, multiple published opinions on civil rights law. She knew then, Wheeler said. She knew you hadn't just stumbled into her courtroom by accident. She knew something was very, very wrong. At 3:55 p.m., 23 FBI agents took positions throughout the courthouse. Not in Veronica's chambers, not yet, but in hallways, stairwells, exits, waiting for my signal. At 4 o'clock p.m., a guard escorted me from holding to the elevator. "Judge wants to see you in her chambers," he said, looking confused. "Never seen this before." I smoothed my cheap coat, checked that the recording device was still secure, and stepped into the elevator. My daughter was waiting, and she had no idea that in 22 minutes, her entire world would end. Officer Miller appeared at the holding cell door at 3:50 p.m. "Winters Evelyn," he called, checking his clipboard. "Judge wants to see you." Amber looked up from where she sat. "See, you judges don't call people back after contempt." "First time for everything," Miller said, looking puzzled. "Let's go." I stood smoothing my coat. My fingers brushed the recording device hidden in the lining, still active, still transmitting to FBI monitoring stations 3 blocks away. Wheeler would be listening. 23 federal agents were positioned throughout the courthouse waiting for my signal. Darlene touched my arm. "You be careful up there. That judge ain't right." "I will." Miller led me down a corridor that smelled like industrial cleaner. We passed other holding cells, men in orange jumpsuits, women waiting for bail hearings, the machinery of a justice system my daughter had corrupted. We reached the elevator. Miller pressed the button for the 4th floor. "Never seen this before?" he muttered. 20 years working here, never seen a judge summon someone from holding to chambers. You must have really gotten under her skin. Or she'd finally recognized me. "I just told the truth," I said carefully. Miller glanced at me. "Yeah, well, truth doesn't always go over well in that courtroom." The comment surprised me. A crack in his professional facade. Maybe Miller had noticed things over the years, patterns he couldn't explain. Defendants processed too efficiently outcomes that didn't match evidence. The elevator rose slowly. 2nd floor, 3rd floor. I wondered what I'd find when those doors opened. Veronica, angry, frightened. Still arrogant enough to believe she could control this. 12 years since we'd spoken. 12 years since she'd looked at my face with anything other than resentment. And now we'd meet again in her chambers with FBI equipment documenting every word with federal agents waiting in stairwells. The elevator stopped. 4th floor. Miller led me down a carpeted hallway. Nameplates on heavy wooden doors, Judge Patterson, Judge Liu, Judge Winters. My daughter's name on polished brass. We stopped outside her door. Miller knocked twice. "Come in," Veronica's voice called. Miller opened the door but didn't enter. "The defendant you requested, Your Honor." "Thank you, Officer Miller. You can go." Miller hesitated. "You want me to wait outside, Your Honor? That won't be necessary. Close the door on your way out." He looked uncertain this violated standard protocol, but nodded and stepped back. The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone with my daughter for the first time in 12 years. Veronica's chambers were exactly what I'd expected. Law books lining walls, framed diplomas, a large desk positioned to establish authority. She sat behind it, still wearing her black robes, hands folded on the desktop, and she was looking directly at me. Not the dismissive glance from the courtroom, not the contemptuous sweep of eyes that categorized and discarded. She was actually looking at my face, studying it. Recognition, fear, anger, confusion. "Hello, Mom," she said quietly. So she knew, had figured it out somehow in the 90 minutes since sentencing me. The question was, what did she plan to do about it? I stepped further into the room, my hand moving near my coat pocket, where the recording device sat hidden. FBI protocol required me to get Veronica talking about the conspiracy, to confirm her knowledge, to document her participation in words that couldn't be explained away. "Hello, Veronica." She studied me for another long moment. "You look different, older, thinner. 12 years will do that. Why are you here?" Her voice was controlled, but I heard the tremor underneath. "In my courtroom, in those clothes, testifying for some homeless veteran. Why?" I could have answered gently, could have appealed to whatever remained of the daughter I'd raised. But gentleness wouldn't get the confession, FB, I needed. Because 47 families have been systematically destroyed by corruption in this courthouse, I said. And I came to find out if my daughter was part of it. Veronica's expression hardened. "Get out!" "No." I said, "Get out. I can add another 24 hours. "You can't." I stepped closer. "Because I'm not actually in contempt, Veronica. I'm a federal circuit court judge, and I've been working with the FBI for 3 months. The color drained from her face. "You're lying," she whispered. I pulled the recording device from my coat and placed it on her desk. "I'm not," I said, "and they've been listening to everything." Veronica stared at the recording device on her desk like it was a live grenade. "You're recording me." Her voice shook with rage and fear. "In my own chambers, that's illegal. Pennsylvania is a 2-party consent state." "I'm not recording you," I said calmly. "Not anymore. I just turned it off." Her eyes snapped to mine. "What?" "The device I wore into your courtroom this morning was authorized under Title III federal wiretap warrant. It recorded Preston Kane assaulting Frank Martinez. It recorded your courtroom proceedings, which are public record anyway. But this conversation," I gestured to the device sitting between us, "this is off the record. I don't believe you." You don't have to believe me, but I'm telling you the truth because I need you to understand something. The FBI isn't relying on anything I've recorded personally. They already have everything they need to prosecute you." Veronica's face went white. "What are you talking about?" I walked to her bookshelf, running my fingers along the spines of law books I'd probably bought her as graduation gifts years ago. Title III authorization isn't just for recording devices people wear, Veronica. It's for wiretaps on phones, computers, and physical spaces. You can't wiretap a judge's chambers. Actually, we can, when there's probable cause that crimes are being committed in those chambers. I turned back to face her. Judge Morrison signed the warrant 6 weeks ago. This office has been under audio surveillance since September 1st. Her hand moved instinctively to her desk phone, her computer, as if she could see the monitoring equipment hidden inside. Every phone call I continued. Every conversation with Preston Kane. Every meeting with Gerald Vance and Mayor Gaines. Every word you've spoken in this room for 6 weeks has been recorded by the Federal Bureau of Investigation under lawful court order. Veronica stood abruptly, her chair rolling backward. "That's impossible. I would have known. How did you think we'd ask your permission before investigating judicial corruption?" I kept my voice steady. Professional, the tone I'd used for 40 years when delivering rulings that destroyed defendants' carefully constructed lies. "You've been careful about avoiding certain conversations in public. You don't discuss the scheme in courtrooms or hallways. But in here behind closed doors, you thought you were safe. I haven't done anything wrong. Don't insult my intelligence, Veronica. I've reviewed the evidence. Cedar Consulting, LLC, the shell company Preston Kane uses to process payments. $150,000 transferred through 6 accounts, ultimately traced to an offshore account in your name. 47 families targeted. Fabricated charges. Excessive bail designed to force property forfeitures. You're making this up. Marcus Wolfe," I said, watching her face. 12 years old. His mother, Darlene, jailed on manufactured vandalism charges after she refused to sell her home on Maple Street. You sentenced her to 60 days. Marcus went into foster care. Their house was condemned 3 weeks later and sold to Kane's development company for a fraction of its value. Veronica said nothing. "Amber Reed," I continued. 19 years old, arrested on false assault charges after her mother refused to vacate. You denied bail despite Amber having no criminal record. Her mother died of a heart attack 2 weeks later, while Amber sat in jail. You got $150 for that family's destruction. Stop it. Teresa Grant, Maria Santos, Howard Chen's parents. I can name all 47 families, Veronica. I've read their files. I've listened to their stories. Some of them are sitting in holding cells right now 3 floors below us, waiting for you to destroy what's left of their lives. They were legal proceedings. They were theft disguised as justice. My voice rose despite my intention to stay calm. You used your authority as a judge to facilitate a criminal conspiracy. You jailed innocent people to clear land for developers. You violated every oath you took, every principle I taught you, every value your father and I tried to instill. Don't you dare bring Dad into this, Veronica hissed. Don't you dare act like you're some moral authority when you cut me out of your life for 12 years. I cut you out. I stared at her. Veronica, you're the one who stopped returning my calls. You're the one who said you didn't want me at your wedding. Because you told me Leon wasn't good enough because you said I was making a mistake. And I was wrong, I said quietly. I should have supported you. I should have apologized. I should have been a better mother. But this... I gestured to her chambers, to the courthouse around us, to the corruption she'd built. This has nothing to do with our family problems. This is about you choosing greed over justice. Veronica sank back into her chair, her hands trembling. Why? I asked. Just tell me why. You had everything a judgeship, respect, a career. Why would you risk it all for bribes? She didn't answer. If you're still here with me right now, please comment any number from 1 to 6 so I know you're still watching. And let me ask you something. If you were in my place standing face to face with the truth about your own family, would you stay silent to protect them? Or would you keep going and face what comes next? Share your thoughts in the comments. And just so you know, The next part of this story includes some dramatized elements created for storytelling and reflection. It may not fully reflect real events. If that's not for you, you're welcome to stop watching here. It started small. Veronica finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Preston approached me 3 years ago with what seemed like a legitimate development proposal. Blighted properties, economic revitalization, jobs for the community. When did it stop being legitimate? She looked down at her hands. Maybe it never was, but I wanted to believe him. He made it sound like we were helping. And the money, he said it was consulting fees, legal advice about property law. I convinced myself it was legitimate compensation for expertise. $150,000 in 3 years, Veronica. $50,000 per year. That's not consulting fees, that's bribery. Her jaw tightened. I know what it is, Mother. I'm not stupid. Then why did you do it? Because Leon's construction business was failing, because we had a mortgage and car payments, and... She stopped herself, realizing she was confirming everything. Why are you really here? If the FBI already has evidence, why do they need you? They don't, I said honestly. They have wiretap recordings. They have financial records from Cedar Consulting's accounts. They executed a secret warrant on Kane's bank 3 months ago and traced every payment. They have testimony from Gerald Vance, who's been cooperating with investigators for 6 weeks in exchange for a plea deal. Veronica's face went gray. Gerald's cooperating. He showed them everything. The payment structure, the coordination meetings, the list of target properties. He gave them Preston Kane, Mayor Gaines, and you. In exchange, he'll get 5 years instead of 20. That bastard, he's smarter than you, apparently. He saw the walls closing in and made the rational choice. I leaned forward. The FBI didn't need me to gather evidence against you, Veronica. They already had enough to convict. I'm here because when Agent Wheeler showed me what my daughter had become, I needed to see it for myself. So this whole thing showing up at Frank's eviction, testifying in my courtroom, getting thrown in, holding, that was all just you playing detective. No, that was all exactly what it appeared to be. I witnessed Preston Kane commit assault. I attempted to testify. You held me in contempt and jailed me. Everything that happened today was real. But you came here planning this. You came to Allentown specifically to find out if the evidence was true. I interrupted. To see if my daughter had really become the kind of judge who would jail innocent people for money. And you answered that question the moment you sentenced me to 24 hours without even recognizing my face. Veronica flinched. I didn't know it was you. That's not the point. The point is, you didn't care who I was. You saw an elderly woman trying to testify about assault, and you dismissed her as waste of time. You've done it so many times that you don't even see people anymore. Just obstacles. Just numbers. Just opportunities for Preston Kane to profit. I never hurt anyone. Marcus Wolfe was 12 years old when you sent his mother to jail. Amber Reed's mother died, while her daughter sat in a cell because of charges you knew were false. Teresa Grant's children went hungry while she served 60 days for a crime that never happened. My voice shook with fury I'd been suppressing for hours. You hurt 47 families, Veronica. You destroyed lives. You violated every principle of justice to line your pockets and help your husband's business. I know, she whispered. God help me, I know what I've done. Footsteps in the hallway, multiple sets moving with purpose. Veronica heard them too. Her eyes went wide. What's happening? I stood. Special Agent Sarah Wheeler and 22 federal agents are about to enter this room with arrest warrants for you, Preston Kane and Mayor Gerald Gaines. You're being charged with racketeering, civil rights deprivation under color of law, wire fraud, honest services, fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. Mom, don't call me that, not now. A knock at the door. Sharp official. Judge Winters. Wheeler's voice called from outside. FBI, we have a warrant. Veronica looked at me with tears streaming down her face. Please. I walked to the door and opened it. 20 agents and FBI windbreakers flooded into the chambers. Wheeler entered first, holding a document. Veronica Winters, you're under arrest for violations of Title 18 United States Code, including conspiracy to commit racketeering and deprivation of civil rights under color of law. As Wheeler read the Miranda warning, 2 agents moved to handcuff my daughter. Veronica looked at me one last time. I'm sorry. I said nothing. Because some apologies come too late. The door burst open. Special Agent Sarah Wheeler entered first, followed by 23 FBI agents in windbreakers. They moved with practiced efficiency, 2 agents securing the exits, others positioning themselves around Veronica's desk cameras, documenting everything. Veronica's face went white. She looked from the agents to me, then back to the recording device still sitting on her desk between us. Veronica Winters, Wheeler said, approaching with handcuffs ready. You're under arrest for violations of Title 18 United States Code, including conspiracy to commit racketeering and deprivation of civil rights, under color of law. No, Veronica whispered. No, this can't. Wheeler turned her around, cuffing her hands behind her back with practiced efficiency. 2 other agents photographed documents on the desk, tagged evidence, documented the scene with methodical precision. You have the right to remain silent, Wheeler said. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Veronica didn't respond. She stood with tears streaming down her face, looking at me with an expression somewhere between betrayal and disbelief. Did you understand your rights as I've explained them? Wheeler asked. Yes, Veronica whispered. Leon Briggs appeared in the doorway, still wearing his construction company polo shirt, face pale with shock. Veronica must have called him after discovering I was her mother. He'd rushed to the courthouse, arriving just in time to watch his wife being arrested. What's happening? He demanded. Evelyn, what the hell is going on? Your wife is being arrested for racketeering, civil rights violations, and bribery, Wheeler said flatly. Are you Leon Briggs? Yes, I'm her husband. We'll need to speak with you as well. Agent Morrison will take your statement. A female agent guided Leon into the hallway. He looked back at Veronica, once his expression unreadable, then disappeared. Gerald Vance stood near the bookshelf, Veronica's attorney, the man who'd been cooperating with FBI for 6 weeks in exchange for a reduced sentence. He looked simultaneously relieved and guilty. Gerald, Veronica said, her voice breaking, you told them everything. He wouldn't meet her eyes. I had no choice, Veronica. They had bank records. They had recordings. They gave me a way out, and I took it. We trusted you. You involved me in a criminal conspiracy, Gerald said quietly. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to prison for 20 years because you and Preston got greedy. Wheeler's phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked at me. Kane and Gaines are in custody. Simultaneous arrests, no incidents. Preston Kane arrested at his office. Mayor Gaines arrested at City Hall. 3 arrests. 3 corrupt officials who'd used their positions to destroy 47 families. What about Amber Reed? I asked Wheeler. The girl in holding downstairs, fabricated assault charges. Already processed for immediate release, Wheeler said. She'll be out within the hour. All charges dropped, record expunged. Same for Darlene Wolfe and 6 others currently in custody on charges originating from Judge Winters' courtroom. Veronica flinched at that, the casual mention of her courtroom, her cases, her systematic abuse reduced to bureaucratic procedure. Mom, she said, her voice small and broken. Please, tell them I cooperated. Tell them You cooperated with nothing. I said, my voice steady. You confirmed what they already knew. You confessed because you had no other choice. Don't expect me to help you now. I'm your daughter. You're a criminal who betrayed your oath and destroyed innocent families. I looked at her directly. You're my daughter, yes, but that doesn't change what you've done. And it doesn't change what happens next. Wheeler gestured to 2 agents. Transport her to federal holding. Arraignment tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Judge Morrison will preside. They led Veronica toward the door. She looked back at me one last time, mascara running, black robes, disheveled hands, cuffed like any other criminal. I'm sorry, she whispered. I said nothing. Officer Miller appeared in the doorway looking stricken. Ms. Winters, He couldn't finish. You didn't know Officer Miller, I said gently. None of this is your fault. I processed those people. I walked them to holding. I never questioned. His voice cracked. You trusted the system, I said. That's not a crime. What she did was the crime. Wheeler approached me quietly. You okay? No, I said honestly, but it's done. We'll need your formal statement tomorrow. I'll be there. I stood alone in Veronica's chambers, listening to footsteps fade agents securing evidence, the courthouse slowly returning to normal. 47 families would get their lives back. My daughter would spend the next 12 to 20 years in prison, and I would spend the rest of my life wondering if I'd made the right choice. Amber Reed had been in that cell for 3 days. She walked out in 3 minutes. I stood in Helen Porter's office. She typed frantically, pulling up case files. Justice Winters. I'm processing the release, but there are procedures. Normally, 48 hours for contempt. How long? Tomorrow afternoon at earliest? Helen, Judge Winters has been arrested for corruption. Every sentence she issued today is suspect. Release Amber Reed immediately. I don't have that authority. Then who does? Chief Judge Kaplan. He's in Harrisburg until tomorrow. I pulled out my phone. What's his number? She wrote it down. I dialed. Judge Kaplan. Gruff, cautious. Judge Kaplan, this is Justice Evelyn Winters' Third Circuit. I need you to authorize emergency release of all defendants sentenced today. The sentences are tainted by corruption. Silence. Then, send me the documentation. I'll sign within the hour. Thank you. Helen's fingers flew. 5 minutes later, a release form printed. Signed. Stamped. Footsteps in the stairwell. Leon appeared with Amber beside him. She looked confused, frightened. What's happening? Am I being transferred? Leon's voice was gentle. No, Miss Reed, you're being released. Released? But I have 57 days. Not anymore. Amber saw me, you, from the cell. My name is Evelyn Winters. Her eyes widened. Winters, like Judge. I'm her mother, and I'm a federal appeals court judge, and I kept my promise. Tears filled her eyes. How? Judge Winters has been arrested. Your sentence is vacated, but I need you to do something. I handed her a business card, Agent Wheeler's number. Those documents you showed me. Testify to the FBI. She clutched the card. Will I be safe? I'll make sure of it. And Amber, you wanted to be a paralegal. When this is over, call me. I'll help you finish your degree. Why are you doing this? Because someone should have a long time ago. Leon escorted us to the entrance. Outside, news vans lined the street. Reporters gathering. There are reporters, Leon said quietly. I'm not making a statement. I looked at Amber. But you can, if you want. We pushed through the doors. Camera flashes, microphones. Justice Winters. Can you confirm your daughter's arrest? I kept walking. Miss, were you in Judge Winters' court? Amber stopped, turned to the cameras. I stepped back. Let her have this. Yes. Her voice grew stronger. I was sentenced to 60 days for missing court. I missed it because I was at my mother's funeral. Today I was released because someone finally listened. Questions erupted. She held up her hand. Judge Winters took 3 months of my life. She took my chance at school, but she didn't take my voice. And now people are listening. I watched from the steps. This young woman shouldn't have needed rescuing, but she'd survived. And now she was speaking. My phone buzzed. Wheeler. We have Kane, arrested at airport, bail hearing, tomorrow 9 a.m. Can you testify? I typed back. Yes. Amber finished, walked back to me. What happens now? Now you rebuild your life, and you help us make sure this never happens to anyone else. She nodded. Thank you, Justice Winters. Go home, Amber. Get rest. Agent Wheeler will call tomorrow. I watched her walk down the steps, free. My phone buzzed again. Kane denied bail, moving on mayor tomorrow. I looked back at the courthouse, where my daughter had sold justice, where she destroyed lives. Tomorrow we'd dismantle the rest of the machine. Preston Kane made it 40 feet from his private jet before the FBI caught him. The next morning I sat in federal court. Judge Morrison presided, silver hair, steel expression, the kind of judge who'd built a career on not being impressed. United States versus Preston Arthur Kane. Bail hearing. He looked down at the file. Mr. Kane, you're charged with conspiracy to commit racketeering, bribery of a public official, and wire fraud. How do you plead? Kane stood in an expensive suit, still defiant. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Prosecutor Sarah Mitchell rose, sharp voice, efficient. "Your Honor, Mr." Kane was apprehended at Lehigh Valley International Airport attempting to board a private flight to the Cayman Islands with $400,000 in cash and falsified documents. He is an extreme flight risk. Kane's attorney objected. "My client is a respected businessman with deep community ties." "Your Honor," Mitchell interrupted, "the prosecution calls Justice Evelyn Grace Winters." I walked to the witness stand, raised my right hand, sworn in. Mitchell's voice was clear. "Justice Winters, please describe what you witnessed on November 14th. "I witnessed Mr. Kane approach Frank Martinez, a 58-year-old veteran who was sitting peacefully on a public bench. Mr. Kane shoved him without provocation. When I identified myself as a witness, Mr. Kane called police and filed a false report claiming Mr. Martinez had attacked him." Kane's attorney stood. Objection. Justice Winters was dressed as a homeless woman. Her credibility. Judge Morrison cut him off. Overruled. Justice Winters' attire doesn't affect her credibility as a federal judge. Continue. Mitchell held up documents. "Your Honor, we have financial records showing Mr. Kane paid Judge Veronica Winters $150,000 over 14 months to expedite foreclosures and incarcerate residents on fabricated charges." Judge Morrison's expression went from neutral to granite. "Bail is denied. Mr. Kane is remanded to federal custody pending trial." The gavel fell. Kane's face drained of color. 2 hours later, FBI conference room. Wheeler sat across from me, Sarah Mitchell beside him, Gerald Vance at the end of the table looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. "I want immunity," Gerald said quietly. Mitchell's voice was ice. "Tell us what you know first." Gerald pulled out a folder. His hands trembled. "Preston came to me 2 years ago with a plan. He'd identified the old Fairgrounds district as prime real estate, historic black neighborhood, elderly homeowners, property values artificially low. He needed the land cleared fast." Wheeler leaned forward. He approached Mayor Gaines first. Gaines introduced him to Veronica Winters. She'd just been appointed. Gerald opened the folder. Bank statements. Transfer records. They set up Cedar Consulting LLC as a pass-through. Kane paid Cedar. Cedar paid Veronica and the mayor. Veronica signed foreclosures without review. Mayor condemned properties for code violations. Kane bought them at auction for nothing. "How many properties?" Mitchell asked. 47 total, 23 families already displaced." I kept my face neutral. But inside, something twisted. My daughter had done this to 47 families. And the incarceration pipeline. Wheeler's voice was quiet. Gerald looked down at his hands. "That was Veronica's idea. Anyone who protested got minor charges: trespassing, disorderly conduct, contempt. She'd sentence them to jail. While locked up, they'd miss mortgage payments, court dates, lose jobs. Then foreclosure became easy." The room went silent. Wheeler's phone buzzed. He stepped out, returned 2 minutes later. "Agents just arrested Mayor Gaines at his office." An hour later, I walked through the FBI building hallway. Mayor Gaines stood there in handcuffs between 2 agents, mid-50s, expensive suit wrinkled, face red with anger. He saw me, stopped. "You're Veronica's mother." I didn't answer, kept walking. "This is a political witch hunt," he called after me. I stopped, turned back, looked at him. He seemed to expect a response. I gave him 3 seconds of silence. Let him see exactly what I thought. Then I turned and kept walking. "Some people don't deserve your words." Outside, I called Wheeler. "The $67 million in seized assets. You said we could petition for a community trust." "Yes, for victim restitution. I want to draft that motion myself." I was hoping you'd say that. I looked back at the federal building. Kane inside awaiting trial. Mayor being processed. Gerald trading testimony for leniency. The machine was coming apart piece by piece. But the work wasn't finished. 47 families still had no homes. And my daughter sat in a cell waiting to face what she'd done. Tomorrow we'd start rebuilding. By the 3rd day, the story had gone national. My daughter's face was on every news channel. I sat in my hotel room watching. CNN, MSNBC, local stations. Federal judge goes undercover to expose daughter's corruption. Allentown foreclosure scandal, 47 families targeted. Veronica's arraignment played on loop. Orange jumpsuit, shackled, eyes down. Federal Judge Morrison reading charges. Bail denied. The camera caught one moment Veronica glancing toward the gallery. Our eyes met. Half a second. She looked away. My phone rang constantly. 60 Minutes, NPR, Washington Post. I declined them all. This wasn't about me. On the fourth evening, I walked into Miller's Diner in Old Fairgrounds. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor, the smell of coffee and pie. More than 50 people packed inside. Former defendants, foreclosure victims, all waiting. A man in his 60s stood. Justice Winters, I'm Howard Pierce. Allentown Morning Call. I organized this. Thank you. He gestured to a microphone. Folks, this is Justice Evelyn Winters. Applause. I raised my hand. Please, I'm here to listen. An older black man stood in back. Dignified. Gray beard. Ma'am, I'm Marcus Wolfe, Darlene's brother. I recognized the name. Mr. Wolfe, your house. 30 years I lived there. Paid it off in 2015. City claimed I owed back taxes. I showed receipts. They said records were lost. Judge Winters signed foreclosure in 10 minutes. 10 minutes to erase 30 years. We're getting your house back, I promise. A young woman stood. 2 children beside her. Late 20s. Exhausted. Teresa Grant, Judge Winters gave me 90 days for shoplifting $30 of groceries. I was feeding my kids. Lost my job, lost my apartment. My kids went to foster care for 2 months. The little girl, maybe 7, held her mother's hand tight. I knelt to her level. What's your name? Emma. Emma, your mom is brave. What happened wasn't fair. We're going to make it better. Teresa wiped her eyes. How? I stood. The FBI seized $67 million in assets. We're petitioning to place it in a community trust for restitution, to return homes, to rebuild. Howard stepped forward, held up documents. Justice Winters. I've been investigating this 2 years. I have emails between Mayor Gaines and Preston Kane. They specifically targeted this neighborhood because it's historically black. They thought residents wouldn't fight back. Anger rippled through the room. We're adding civil rights violations to the charges, I said. This wasn't just corruption, it was racial targeting. Marcus spoke. When do we get our homes back? Trust fund hearing next week. If approved, restitution begins immediately. Mr. Wolfe, your house is standing. You'll be among the first to return. The next afternoon, I walked Old Fairgrounds with Wheeler. November wind bit through my coat. Empty lots, boarded windows, construction equipment idle. Wheeler checked his tablet. 31 properties standing, 16 demolished. Can we rebuild the 16 with $67 million? Yes. Time, but yes. We stopped at 417 Maple Street. Marcus Wolfe's house. 2-story. White paint peeling, but solid. He'll be back within a month, Wheeler said. I looked down the street, saw what this neighborhood had been, what it could be. This is what justice should look like. Restoration, not punishment. Wheeler's phone buzzed. Mayor Gaines just entered guilty plea, cooperating against Kane. Good. We walked back. My phone rang. Unknown number. Justice Winters. Justice Winters, Federal Bureau of Prisons. Your daughter, Veronica Winters, has requested a visit. Will you come? I stopped walking. 6 days since her arrest. 6 days since I'd seen her. Ma'am. Yes, I'm here. Will you come? 47 families. Marcus, Teresa, Emma. The work ahead. My daughter in a cell? I don't know. She's asked every day. I wanted you to know. Silence, waiting. Tell her I'll think about it. Yes, ma'am. I hung up. Wheeler watched. You okay? No, but I will be. 10 days after my daughter's arrest, I sat in the front row of Judge Morrison's federal courtroom, watching him review the asset disposition motion. Sarah Mitchell stood at the prosecution table, her files stacked precisely. Wheeler sat beside me, his fingers drumming against his briefcase. Morrison looked up. Mrs. Winters, you've proposed something unprecedented, a $67 million community trust fund built from seized corruption proceeds. Walk me through it. I approached the podium carrying only my handwritten notes. Your Honor, 18 U.S.C. Section 981 prioritizes victim restoration before treasury forfeiture. These families were targeted because they owned land developers wanted. I propose 5 purposes. Morrison nodded for me to continue. First, return all 31 standing properties to original owners free and clear. Second, compensate families whose 16 demolished homes can't be returned fair market value plus relocation costs. Third, rebuild those 16 homes on available lots in the district matching original architecture where possible. I paused, glancing at Marcus in the gallery. Fourth, establish a legal aid center in the neighborhood to prevent future exploitation. Fifth, create an economic development fund for local businesses, not outside developers. Mitchell stood. Your Honor, the government opposes this plan's scope. Victim compensation is appropriate, but community development exceeds statutory authority. Morrison's expression didn't change. Ms. Mitchell, these victims lost more than property. They lost neighborhood stability, generational wealth, community cohesion. How do you quantify that damage? Mitchell hesitated. The government withdraws its objection, Your Honor. Morrison turned back to me. Who administers this trust? A 7-member community board. I said, I recommend Marcus Wolf, Darlene's son, whose home still stands, Howard Chen, the architect who documented everything, Darlene herself, Amber Reed, who represents the younger generation, 3 additional community members appointed by consensus. Not yourself, Morrison asked. No, Your Honor. This community should control their own restoration. I was the catalyst, not the savior. Morrison addressed Marcus directly. Mr. Wolf, you were 12 years old when your house was condemned. What do you want? Marcus stood, his voice steady. I want my house back, Your Honor. The one with the porch my grandfather built. It's still standing on Maple Street. I want to bring my mother home. Morrison closed the file. The court approves the Community Trust Fund as proposed. All 31 properties return to original owners immediately. 16 compensation packages will be calculated at fair market value, plus documented expenses. Rebuilding begins within 90 days, subject to community board approval of designs. The Legal Aid Center receives 20% of remaining funds. Economic development grants require quarterly reporting. He looked around the courtroom. This trust operates under 10-year court monitoring with quarterly audits. The board meets monthly minutes filed publicly. Any developer approaching board members faces immediate investigation. This community was nearly destroyed by greed disguised as justice. We're rebuilding it with justice disguised as mercy. His gavel fell. So ordered. Outside, Marcus hugged Darlene while Howard made calls about property inspections. Amber stood with Frank, both of them crying. Mitchell approached me carefully. That was decent of you, she said, declining the board seat. They didn't need me controlling their future, I said. They need their power back. Wheeler touched my elbow. Judge Morrison signed something else. He handed me a document, a visitor authorization for FCI Allentown valid immediately. My daughter's prison. The place I'd been avoiding for 10 days. She's been asking for you, Wheeler said quietly. Every day. I folded the pass into my pocket. The courtroom had emptied. Through the windows, I could see Marcus pointing at something across the street. Probably his house, probably imagining his mother standing on that porch again. I'd exposed the corruption triggered the arrests, proposed the restoration. I'd done everything a federal judge could do. Now I had to do the one thing only a mother could do. I'd avoided this long enough. I'd avoided this for 6 months. But some conversations can't be postponed forever. The Federal Correctional Institution sat 20 minutes outside Allentown, surrounded by razor wire and procedural coldness. I surrendered my phone, walked through metal detectors, signed paperwork. A guard checked my visitor authorization twice before leading me down a corridor that smelled like industrial cleaner. The visiting room had a glass partition, telephones mounted on either side, plastic chairs bolted to the floor. Veronica appeared through the opposite door. She'd lost weight. No makeup hair pulled back severely. The orange jumpsuit made her look younger, somehow more like the daughter I'd raised than the judge I'd arrested. She picked up her phone. I did the same. I didn't think you'd come, she said. I didn't think I would either. 6 months had passed since Judge Morrison approved her plea agreement, 20 years in federal prison parole eligible after 12. Her attorney had called it merciful. I'd called it adequate. Marcus moved back into his house last month, I said. Darlene cried for 2 hours on that porch. Amber started community college criminal justice degree. The legal aid center opens in September. Veronica's hand trembled against the phone. That's good. 47 families got their properties back or received compensation. 16 new homes are under construction. The community board rejected 3 development proposals already. Mom, I'm sorry. I'd rehearsed responses for half a year, cold silence, screaming rage, everything between. But sitting here, looking at my daughter through bulletproof glass, I felt only exhaustion. Are you sorry you did it? I asked, or sorry you got caught? She flinched. Both. At least that's honest. Veronica pressed her palm against the glass. Preston approached me 3 years ago. He showed me development plans, talked about revitalizing blighted areas, bringing jobs. I believed him at first. I actually believed we were helping. When did you stop believing? After the 6th family, maybe the 10th. The money made it easier not to think about their faces. You could have come to me. Would you have helped me? I considered lying, offering maternal comfort through telephone wires and glass barriers. But Veronica deserved honesty. I would have told you to turn yourself in, I said. I would have recommended an attorney, possibly negotiated a cooperation agreement. I would have helped you do the right thing. That's not the same as protecting you from consequences. She nodded slowly. Leon hasn't visited. He sent divorce papers last month. I know. He called me before filing. Did you tell him to leave me? I told him to do what he needed to do. Veronica wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Will you come back, visit again? The question I'd been dreading. I looked at my daughter, my only child, the girl I'd raised alone after her father died, the woman who'd thrown away everything I'd taught her about integrity. I wanted to promise regular visits, gradual reconciliation, eventual forgiveness. But I couldn't lie to her. I don't know, I said. I came today because you're my daughter and you asked me to. But I can't walk this road with you, Veronica. I can't sit across from you every month and pretend this didn't happen. I can't be your comfort while those families are still rebuilding what you destroyed. I understand. Maybe someday, I added. Maybe years from now after you've served real time and demonstrated real remorse. But not today, not soon. She nodded, crying silently. Thank you for coming. For today, I mean. The guard signaled 5 minutes remaining. Take care of yourself, I said. Use this time, read, think, figure out who you want to be when you get out. I will. I stood still, holding the phone. Veronica stood too, mirroring me through the glass. Goodbye, Veronica. Goodbye, Mom. Walking to my car, I realized I hadn't cried. Not in the courtroom 6 months ago. Not in this visiting room today. Not once during this entire nightmare. Maybe someday I would cry for the daughter I'd lost, for the families she'd hurt, for the justice system we'd both devoted our lives to, and she'd corrupted. Maybe someday grief would crack through this protective numbness. But not today. Today, there was still work to do. 1 year later, I stood on Maple Street and watched Marcus Wolfe hang a wreath on his front door. The old fairgrounds district had transformed. 31 restored homes gleamed with fresh paint and repaired porches. 16 newly constructed houses stood where demolished properties once sat, their architecture matching what Howard had documented. Gabled roofs, wide front steps, wooden railings honoring the neighborhood's history. Families moved in weekly, carrying boxes, and furniture planting flowers in yards that had been condemned barely 12 months earlier. Marcus stepped back, adjusting the wreath. 3 bedrooms, new kitchen, original hardwood floors. My grandfather built that porch in 1967. Darlene appeared in the doorway. Marcus, bring those grocery bags inside before the ice cream melts. Yes, Mom, he grinned at me. She's been giving orders since we moved back. I missed it. Number 417 Maple Street looked exactly like Howard's photograph, the one documenting what developers wanted to erase. The community board had insisted on authenticity. This is home, Marcus said quietly. Not reconstruction. Home. Down the street, Teresa Grant swept her new porch. The 2-bedroom house replaced the one demolished while she'd been jailed on fabricated charges. Her children had their own rooms now. Her criminal record had been expunged. She'd found work with the school district's steady pay with benefits. She waved when she saw me. "Judge Winters, you coming to the celebration tonight?" "I'll be there." Miller's Diner had organized a community celebration 1 year since the arrests. Howard posted flyers throughout the neighborhood. The diner couldn't accommodate everyone, so they'd blocked off the street, set up tables outside. More than 100 people showed up. Frank stood at a salvaged microphone. "1 year ago, we thought we'd lost everything. Our homes, our neighborhood, our dignity. Then this woman risked everything to give us justice." Applause erupted. I shook my head, uncomfortable with praise. "I didn't rebuild these houses," I said when Frank insisted I speak. "You did that. Marcus and the board Howard's architectural work, every family that chose to come home. This neighborhood survived because you refused to let greed win." Amber Reed stood near the dessert table wearing a blue dress and holding a certificate. She'd graduated from the paralegal program with honors, a 2-year degree finished in 18 months. The community board had already offered her a position at the Legal Aid Center. "My mom would have loved seeing this," she told me quietly. "She always said this neighborhood raised her." The Winters Community Legal Center would open next week in a renovated storefront on Cedar Avenue. Free legal assistance for housing issues, family court matters, criminal record expungements. Amber would staff it alongside 2 attorneys hired using trust fund money. They'd already received 47 intake requests. Officer David Miller appeared near the edge of the crowd, standing apart but present. He'd resigned from courthouse security 3 months after Veronica's arrest, unable to work in a building where he'd unknowingly facilitated corruption. The guilt had eaten at him all those people he'd escorted to holding cells, all those defendants processed through a system he'd trusted. The ACLU had hired him as a court reform advocate. He traveled Pennsylvania, now speaking about judicial accountability, training courthouse staff to recognize warning signs of corruption. His testimony about Veronica's unusual courtroom procedures had been powerful during the trial. He nodded at me across the celebration. I nodded back. We'd spoken several times since the arrests, him apologizing for not seeing what was happening, me assuring him he couldn't have known. Miller had been a good officer trapped in a corrupt system. Now he was helping fix that system. My phone buzzed, an email notification. From Veronica Winters, FCI, Allentown subject. Visit request. I didn't open it. She'd sent similar requests monthly for 6 months. Howard approached carrying 2 paper plates. "You planning to read that?" "Not today." Around us, families laughed and celebrated restoration. Children ran between tables. This neighborhood had survived demolition, corruption, exploitation. But I hadn't visited my daughter in 6 months. I put my phone away without responding. 18 months since I'd looked at my daughter's face that brief prison visit through bulletproof glass. Part of me wondered if I'd ever be ready. The other part wondered if it really mattered. 18 months. That's how long I'd left that question unanswered. But some doors don't close just because you ignore them. I'd deleted 23 visit requests over 12 months. Each email from Veronica asked the same thing: would I come back? Could we talk again? Was there any hope for us? I'd archived everyone without responding, telling myself I needed more time, more distance, more certainty about what forgiveness looked like. But certainty never arrives on schedule. The warden recognized me when I signed in. "She asks about you every month, asks if you've stopped by." I know. "She'll be glad you're here." I wasn't sure I was glad. Walking down that familiar corridor, smelling industrial cleaner and institutional bleakness, I questioned whether 18 months was long enough or too long or completely irrelevant to whatever conversation waited behind that glass partition. Veronica appeared looking different than I remembered. Healthier somehow, less haunted. She'd gained back the weight, she'd lost her hair styled rather than simply pulled back. When she picked up the phone, her hand didn't tremble. "You came," she said. "I came. I stopped expecting you after the 10th request. I stopped counting after the 15th. She smiled slightly, not happiness exactly, but something close to acceptance. "I've been doing therapy, twice a week. The prison psychologist says I have work to do around accountability and shame. Do you agree?" "Yes. I spent 3 years blaming circumstances, blaming Preston, blaming the system that made judicial corruption possible. but I made choices. Every signature, every jail sentence, every bribe. Those were mine. I studied my daughter through bulletproof glass looking for manipulation or performance. But her eyes held something I hadn't seen during our first visit, genuine remorse that went deeper than regret about consequences. I work in the prison law library now, Veronica continued, helping other inmates with appeals, sentence reductions, clemency petitions. Last month, I helped a woman get 10 years reduced because her trial attorney missed exculpatory evidence. That's good. It's nowhere near enough, but it's a start. Making wrong into right might be impossible, I said, but making it better, maybe. Veronica nodded. There's a woman here serving 25 years for drug conspiracy. She was convicted in Lehigh County 3 years ago. Different judge, different case. But when I read her file, I saw the same patterns. Excessive bail, inadequate defense sentencing that didn't match the crime. I've been helping her draft a post-conviction motion. Will it work? I don't know, but I have to try. These women, they're not abstract legal problems anymore. They're people whose lives got destroyed by a system I helped corrupt. I thought about Marcus and Darlene Teresa and her children Amber rebuilding her life from fabricated charges. Veronica had destroyed 47 families directly. How many others had suffered from judicial corruption she'd normalized or enabled? The Legal Aid Center has handled 200 cases in 6 months, I said. Amber Reed runs intake. She's good at it, understands what it feels like when the system targets you. Veronica flinched. Does she hate me? I don't know. We don't discuss you. That's fair. Silence stretched between us. Outside the visiting room, guards walked past. Someone laughed in another booth. Normal sounds in an abnormal place. Will you be there when I get out? Veronica asked quietly. 12 years from now, assuming I make parole. Will you be there? The question I'd avoided for 18 months. I could lie offer false comfort. I could refuse maintain permanent distance. Or I could tell her the truth that I didn't know because forgiveness doesn't operate on schedules or guarantees. I don't know, I said. 12 years is a long time. I'll be 80 years old. You'll be 53. We'll both be different people than we are today. But maybe. Veronica pressed her palm against the glass like she'd done during our first visit. This time I matched the gesture, my hand against hers, with bulletproof barriers between us. I didn't come here to forgive you, I said. I'm not ready for that. I might never be ready, but I wanted to see if you're becoming someone I can recognize again. Am I? I looked at my daughter, older, humbler, carrying shame like penance. She destroyed lives, including her own. She'd corrupted justice and betrayed everything I'd taught her. But sitting here talking about helping other inmates and accepting accountability, she looked less like the judge I'd arrested and more like the daughter I'd raised. You're starting to, I said. Tears ran down Veronica's face. Thank you, Mom. Mom, not Judge Winters or mother with formal distance. Just Mom, the word she'd used as a child. Just this once, I said, but we both knew I'd accepted it. The guard signaled our time was ending. Veronica wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders. Will you come back? I'll think about it. That's more than I deserve. Yes, I agreed. It is. Driving back to Allentown, I thought about doors. Some doors close forever. Locks change, keys thrown away. No amount of knocking will open them again. Some doors stay locked but remain capable of opening if the right combination appears, if enough time passes, if both sides decide the space between them matters less than connection. And some doors just need time. I didn't know which kind this was, but I was finally ready to find out. Looking back at everything that happened, I realized this story isn't just about corruption or justice. It's about the painful truth that family drama stories often teach us. Sometimes the people we love most are capable of the deepest betrayal. I'm 68 years old now, and if there's one lesson I've learned from this nightmare, it's this. Don't be like me. Don't wait until corruption destroys 47 families before you act. Don't assume your children absorbed your values simply because you raised them well. And most importantly, don't let love blind you to accountability. Many grandma stories involve protecting grandchildren or mending broken families. But this is one of those grandma stories where I had to choose justice over my own daughter. That choice nearly destroyed me, but it saved a community. These kinds of family drama stories remind us that real love sometimes means enforcing consequences, not avoiding them. The lesson here is clear integrity isn't negotiable even when it costs everything you love. Veronica didn't become corrupt overnight. There were warning signs I missed the expensive lifestyle on a judge's salary, the defensive reactions when I asked about her cases, the gradual distancing from family values. I ignored them because confronting them meant admitting my daughter wasn't who I believed she was. Family drama stories like ours prove that accountability must come before loyalty. Among all the grandma stories, you might hear mine is different because I couldn't protect my daughter from herself. Sometimes real love means letting people face what they've done. I believe God gives us moments to choose between comfortable silence and difficult truth. I chose truth, and it shattered my family. But those 47 families got their homes back. That's what matters. My advice: don't wait for crises to enforce your principles. Speak up when something feels wrong, especially if it involves family. Because silence protects nobody. It just delays the inevitable reckoning. If you found this story meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe for more impactful stories. Final note: this content contains dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the lessons and messages are entirely valuable. If this style doesn't suit you, that's okay. Please seek content that better fits your needs.